The day I returned to my family's farm, Carson's laughter still echoed in my ears. A farmer? You? That's adorable, Hope. Maybe you can grow some petunias while the real entrepreneurs make actual money. I'm Hope, and at 35, I was starting over. The divorce papers were barely dry, and here I stood, staring at 50 acres of neglected land that hadn't seen a decent harvest in years. The afternoon sun beat down on the overgrown fields, making the weeds shimmer like waves of golden failure. You're making a huge mistake. My sister Angela's voice crackled through my phone. The farm hasn't turned a profit since Dad died. Come stay with me in the city instead. I can't do that, Ang. I kicked at a clump of dried earth. I need to prove what? That Carson was wrong about you? Move on, Hope. He's already living it up with that trophy wife of his. I hung up and walked toward the old farmhouse, its paint peeling like scabs from a wound. Through the dusty windows, I could see the kitchen where Mom used to can vegetables every fall. The memory hit harder than I expected. Well, look who finally showed up. A voice startled me. Madeline, our elderly neighbor, was leaning against our shared fence. About time someone brought this place back to life. Madeline, I didn't know you were still here. She laughed, her weathered face crinkling. Where else would I be? Unlike some folks, I believe in sticking to my roots. She gestured at the fields. Your daddy would be proud to see you back. Not everyone shares that opinion, I muttered, thinking of Carson's smirk during our last conversation. You mean that ex of yours? Madeline spat on the ground. I saw him drive by last week in that fancy car, showing off to his new wife. All flash, no substance. The memory of that day flooded back. Carson had deliberately driven past the farm, his new Mercedes gleaming. Paisley, his girlfriend-turned-wife, had waved from the passenger seat with that plastic smile of hers. Still playing in the dirt, Hope? He'd called out. While you're growing vegetables, I'm growing my investment portfolio. But hey, someone's got to feed the real winners, right? He's wrong about me, I said, more to myself than Madeline. About all of this? Course he is. Madeline reached over the fence and grabbed my hand. But honey, you've got to want this for yourself, not just to spite him. I pulled away, walking toward the old barn. Inside, Dad's equipment sat collecting dust. The tractor he'd loved, tools hanging like forgotten promises on the walls. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Angela. Carson's bragging about some big investment deal at his bank. Says he's about to make millions. Please tell me you're not serious about this farming thing. I switched off my phone and climbed up to the hayloft. The setting sun painted the fields in shades of orange and purple, and for the first time since the divorce, I felt something other than anger or shame. I felt possibility. Watch me. I whispered to the empty barn. Just watch me. That night, I sat at the old kitchen table, surrounded by farming magazines and loan applications. The house creaked and settled around me, its familiar sounds both comforting and challenging. On the wall hung a photo of Dad teaching me about soil composition when I was 12. He'd always said I had the touch, the patience for growing things. A knock at the door startled me. It was Madeline, holding a casserole dish. Can't start a revolution on an empty stomach, she said, setting it down. She glanced at my paperwork. Organic farming, huh? Smart girl. That's where the money is these days. If I can get it right. I ran my fingers through my hair. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Everyone thought Thomas Edison was crazy too. She headed for the door but paused. Hope, honey, success is the best revenge. Remember that. After she left, I stood in the doorway watching darkness settle over my inheritance. The land might be neglected, but it wasn't dead. Neither was I. Carson could laugh all he wanted, Angela could doubt, but I was done being the family disappointment. Tomorrow, I'd start turning this place around. Tomorrow, I'd plant the first seeds of my new life. And someday, soon, they'd all see what I was capable of. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to Angela. Watch this space, sis. I'm about to grow something bigger than Carson's ego. Then I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, leaving the farming magazines spread across the table like battle plans. The war for my future was about to begin, and this time I intended to win. 3 months into my farming venture, and I was failing spectacularly. The summer heat had turned brutal. My first attempt at seedlings had withered, and I'd just discovered the irrigation system needed a complete overhaul. This is exactly what Carson said would happen, I muttered, kicking the broken pump. Talking to yourself already? That's not a good sign. A man's voice made me jump. He stood at the edge of my field, wearing mud-stained boots and a knowing smile. I'm Milo. Madeline sent me. Said you might need some help. I wiped sweat from my forehead. Unless you can perform miracles, I doubt you can help. Miracles? Nah. He walked over to examine the pump. But I've been consulting for organic farms for 15 years. This? He tapped the pump. This is nothing. 15 years? I watched him crouch down to inspect the machinery. And you just happened to be in the neighborhood? Madeline's persistent. She called me 3 times yesterday. He stood up, brushing dirt from his knees. Your soil's good, rich in nutrients, but your irrigation's shot and you're planting the wrong crops for this climate. Wrong crops? My heart sank. I followed all the online guides. Theory's different from practice. He gestured across the field. You're trying to grow what you think will sell. Instead, you need to grow what this land wants to give. My phone buzzed. Angela again. Carson's new wife just posted pics of their Maldives vacation. Please tell me you're not still playing farmer. I shoved the phone back in my pocket. So what does this land want to give? Milo spent the next hour walking the property with me, pointing out soil variations and explaining microclimates I hadn't even noticed. His knowledge was impressive, but his consultation fee would probably be astronomical. Look, I said, I appreciate the advice, but I can't afford... Who said anything about payment? He grinned. Madeline already covered it. Said it's her investment in local agriculture. That evening, Madeline came over with dinner again. So you met Milo? Why did you do that? I asked, setting out plates. You didn't have to. Oh, hush. She waved away my protests. Consider it payback for all the times your daddy helped me with my horses. Besides, she winked, I heard Carson's bank is looking for local organic suppliers. Wouldn't it be something if you became their vendor? I nearly dropped the plates. What? Times are changing, Hope. Big banks want to show they're environmentally conscious. They're starting to source local produce for their corporate cafeterias. The next morning, Milo returned with detailed plans for rotating crops and a list of equipment we'd need. We spent hours repairing the irrigation system, and he taught me about soil composition and natural pest control. You're not afraid to get your hands dirty, he observed as we finished. That's rare these days. Growing up here, dirt was my second language. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I just need to remember how to speak it. Just then, a familiar Mercedes pulled up to the farm entrance. Carson stepped out, looking expensive in his banker's suit. Paisley remained in the car, tapping on her phone. Well, well, Carson called out, walking toward us. Still playing in the mud, Hope? I just closed a deal worth more than this entire property. Milo straightened up beside me. And you are? Carson Simmons, vice president at... Nobody who matters. I cut in. What do you want, Carson? He smirked. Just checking if you've come to your senses yet. This place is worthless. You should sell while you can. Thanks for the advice, I said, turning back to the irrigation system. Don't let the gate hit you on the way out. After they left, Milo looked thoughtful. You know what would really get under his skin? Making this place successful? Is that even possible? He pulled out his phone and showed me an article about the growing demand for organic produce in corporate settings. The market's changing. Big institutions are looking for reliable local suppliers. With the right approach, we could actually make this work. I finished. We? I mean, if you're interested in a partnership. I held my breath. I've got the land. You've got the knowledge. He extended his dirt-covered hand. Partners? As we shook on it, I saw Madeline watching from her porch, looking mighty pleased with herself. My phone buzzed again. Probably Angela with more updates about Carson's perfect life. But for once, I didn't care. That night, I sat on the porch, looking at the freshly repaired irrigation system. For the first time since coming back, the land didn't feel like a burden. It felt like potential. And with Milo's help, I was finally starting to speak its language again. 6 months later, the farm was unrecognizable. Rows of organic vegetables stretched across the fields, their leaves dancing in the morning breeze. Milo and I had worked sunrise to sunset, transforming the neglected land into something beautiful. "Look at these tomatoes," Milo said, holding up a perfectly ripe specimen. "Better than anything you'll find in stores." I was about to respond when a sleek BMW pulled into the driveway. Angela stepped out, designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. "Oh my God, Hope." She wrinkled her nose. "You actually did it. You really became a farmer." "Nice to see you too, sis." I continued harvesting tomatoes. "What brings you to the dirt?" "Can I check on my little sister?" She picked her way carefully through the rows, trying to keep her heels clean. Though I have to admit, this isn't quite the disaster I expected. Milo chuckled beside me. "High praise indeed." "And who's this?" Angela's eyes narrowed, giving Milo an appraising look. Milo Wade, farm consultant and partner. He offered his hand, which Angela regarded like it might bite her. "Partner? Hope, are you actually making money here?" Before I could answer, Madeline's voice rang out across the field. "Making money? Girl, your sister's about to be the talk of the county." She approached with a newspaper in hand. "Have you seen this?" The article highlighted the growing trend of corporate cafeterias sourcing local organic produce. Several major banks were mentioned, including Carson's. "Speaking of Carson," Angela said, scrolling through her phone, "his investments aren't doing so hot. Paisley's been complaining about having to postpone their yacht purchase." "Karma's a patient gardener," Madeline muttered. I turned to Milo. "Maybe we should look into those corporate contracts." "Already on it." He pulled out a folder. "I've been in talks with several companies. Your produce quality is exceptional, Hope. We could supply multiple corporate cafeterias by next season." Angela watched this exchange with growing interest. "Wait, you're serious about this? This isn't just some revenge fantasy against Carson?" "This stopped being about Carson months ago." I gestured at the thriving fields. "This is about proving something to myself." Later that afternoon, as Angela prepared to leave, she hesitated by her car. "I owe you an apology, Hope. I thought you were having a breakdown after the divorce, but..." She looked around at the flourishing farm. "You've built something real here." "Thanks, Ang." I hugged her, dirt-stained clothes and all. "That means a lot." After she left, Milo and I sat on the porch, reviewing potential contracts. The numbers were better than I'd dared hope for. "We could double production next season," he said, pointing to projections. "Your father's old Northfield is perfect for expansion." "Dad would have loved this." I smiled, remembering his passion for the land. "He always said I had the touch." He was right. Milo's hand brushed mine as he reached for another document. "You've got something special here, Hope. Something Carson never saw." The moment was interrupted by Madeline, who appeared with her usual impeccable timing and a fresh pie. "You two look cozy." "We're working," I said quickly, feeling my cheeks flush. "Sure you are." She set down the pie with a knowing smile. "By the way, I heard through the grapevine that Carson's bank is desperate for a reliable organic supplier. Their current vendor can't meet demand." Milo's eyes met mine. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "That would be too perfect," I said, but I was already imagining Carson's face when he realized where his bank's produce came from. "Sometimes perfect is exactly what you deserve," Madeline said, cutting the pie. "After all the times he mocked your dreams, wouldn't it be sweet to become his bank's saving grace?" That night, after everyone had gone, I walked through the fields under a full moon. The vegetables cast long shadows, and the air was thick with the smell of earth and growing things. My phone buzzed with a text from Angela. "Carson's looking worried at work. Whatever you're planning, I want front row seats. I smiled, touching a tomato plant gently. 6 months ago, I'd returned here broken, seeking revenge. Now I was building something bigger than Carson's mockery, bigger than my own hurt. I was building a future. The next morning, Milo arrived early with coffee and news. Got a meeting set up with a major bank's procurement team next week. His eyes twinkled. Guess which bank? I laughed, taking the coffee. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. More like a sense of justice, he replied. And together we walked into the fields, ready to harvest another day's worth of sweet revenge. The financial news blared from my truck's radio as I drove into town. Market analysts predict significant downturn, investment firms facing unprecedented challenges. My phone rang. Angela. Have you seen the news? Carson's looking terrible at work. Apparently, some of his big investments are tanking. I've been a bit busy, I said, pulling into the local coffee shop. Got a meeting with a major bank today about supplying their corporate cafeterias. Wait. Angela's voice sharpened. Is it Carson's bank? The bell chimed as I entered the coffee shop, and there he was. Carson himself looking considerably less polished than usual. His designer suit seemed to hang on him differently, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. I'll call you back, I told Angela, hanging up. Carson spotted me and his face twisted into that familiar smirk, though it seemed forced. Well, if it isn't the farmer, still playing in the dirt? Still making bad investments? I couldn't help myself. His smirk faltered. I don't know what you've heard, but... Your coffee, sir, the barista called out. And your card was declined. The color drained from Carson's face. I stepped forward, pulling out my wallet. I've got it. I don't need your charity, he snapped, but I was already paying. Consider it karma. I grabbed my own coffee and headed for the door, but his voice stopped me. You think you're so clever with your little organic farm, he called after me. But I'm about to close a deal that'll make your annual revenue look like pocket change. I turned back. Good luck with that, Carson. I hear banks are getting pretty picky about their investments these days. Outside, Milo was waiting in his truck. Was that who I think it was? Yep, looking a bit worse for wear. I climbed in. Ready for this meeting? We drove to the city, where the bank's headquarters loomed like a glass mountain. Inside, we were led to a conference room where Logan Steele, the head of procurement, waited with his team. Ms. Foster? Logan stood to greet us. Your reputation precedes you. We've heard impressive things about your organic operation. Thank you, but I can't take all the credit. I gestured to Milo. My partner's expertise has been invaluable. The meeting progressed better than I'd hoped. Logan seemed particularly interested in our sustainable practices and growth potential. We're looking to completely revamp our corporate dining services, he explained. Our current supplier isn't meeting our standards, and with the economic situation... He paused, checking his phone. Speaking of which, excuse me for a moment. When he returned, his expression was grim. Sorry about that. We're dealing with some internal issues. Several of our investment portfolios are underperforming. I heard the market's been volatile, Milo said carefully. That's putting it mildly. Logan shuffled some papers. But that's why partnerships like this are so important. Stability in uncertain times. As we wrapped up, Logan walked us out personally. We'll need to scale up quickly if you're interested. Our current supplier is terminating their contract next month. In the elevator, we ran into Carson. He did a double take, then tried to recover his composure. Hope? What are you doing here? Meeting with procurement. Logan answered before I could. Ms. Foster might be our new primary supplier for the corporate dining program. Carson's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. You can't be serious. She's just a small-time farmer. A small-time farmer with impressive yield rates and quality metrics, Logan replied coolly. Actually, Carson, since you're here, your department will need to revise its lunch budget. We're upgrading to premium organic options. The elevator doors opened and Carson practically fled. Logan turned to us with raised eyebrows. I take it you two know each other? Ancient history, I said. Back in Milo's truck, we sat in silence for a moment before bursting into laughter. Did you see his face? Milo wiped his eyes. When Logan mentioned the lunch budget? My phone buzzed with a text from Angela. Carson just called Paisley, freaking out about some farmer taking over his bank's cafeteria. Please tell me that's you. We haven't signed anything yet, I reminded Milo as he started the truck. After that meeting, it's just a matter of time. He glanced at me. You okay? Seeing him like that. I thought it would feel better, I admitted. More satisfying. Maybe because you've outgrown the need for revenge, he suggested. You've built something real here, Hope. Something that matters. As we drove home, past fields golden in the late afternoon sun, I realized he was right. The sweet taste of revenge was nothing compared to the satisfaction of genuine success. My phone buzzed again. Logan's office, requesting a second meeting to finalize details. The pieces were falling into place, but somehow Carson's humiliation no longer seemed like the prize I'd once thought it would be. We need to double production by next month, I announced, spreading the signed contract across the kitchen table. Madeline and Milo leaned in to examine the numbers. These figures are impressive, Madeline whistled. The bank's really going all in. Logan called this morning, I said. They want us to supply 3 more of their locations. Apparently, their executives are raving about the quality. My phone buzzed. Angela again. Turn on the financial news now. I flicked on the old TV in the corner. The news anchor's voice filled the kitchen. Major investment firms facing significant losses. Several high-risk portfolios have collapsed, leaving investors scrambling. That's Carson's department, Madeline said quietly. No wonder he looked like death warmed over at the grocery store yesterday. The doorbell rang. Logan stood on my porch, looking oddly out of place in his expensive suit among the farm equipment. Hope, he said, we need to talk. May I come in? Inside, he declined Madeline's offer of coffee, getting straight to business. We're expanding the organic program faster than anticipated. The market crash is making our board nervous. They want to invest in tangible assets. Sustainable agriculture is suddenly very attractive to our shareholders. What exactly are you saying? Milo asked. We want to partner with you. Not just as suppliers, but as a flagship example of sustainable banking investment. We'd provide capital for expansion, marketing support. Why us? I interrupted. There are bigger farms out there. Logan smiled. Because you're the real deal. Your operation is exactly what we need. Small enough to be authentic, large enough to scale. He paused. And frankly, your success story is marketing gold. Local farmer revitalizes family land, becomes model of sustainable agriculture. While her ex-husband tanks millions in bad investments, Madeline muttered. Logan's eyes flickered. I wasn't going to mention that part, but yes, the irony hasn't escaped notice. Carson's department is under review. His investment strategies have proven problematic. After Logan left, Milo and I walked the fields, discussing expansion plans. The setting sun painted everything in gold, making even the old tractor look magical. We'll need more help, he said. Maybe hire some local workers, get another tractor? A car screeched into the driveway, Paisley's convertible. She stormed toward us, designer heels sinking into the soft earth. This is your fault, she screamed. Carson's being investigated because of you. My fault? I stepped forward. How exactly is Carson's bad judgment my fault? He's distracted, obsessed with proving he's better than your stupid farm. Tears streaked her makeup. They're freezing our accounts, canceling our credit cards. Do you know how humiliating that is? About as humiliating as being told you're worthless because you believe in honest work? Milo stepped between us. I think you should leave. This isn't over. She spat, stumbling back to her car. Well, Madeline called from the porch where she'd been watching. That was better than my daytime soaps. My phone rang. Angela again. Hope, it's worse than we thought. Carson's team lost millions. The bank's launching a full audit. That night, unable to sleep, I found Milo still working in the barn, reviewing expansion plans. "You should rest," I said. "So should you." He looked up. "Having second thoughts about the bank's offer?" "No, it's not that." I sat beside him. "I wanted revenge for so long, but now that it's happening, now you're wondering if success is revenge enough?" "Something like that." He set down his papers. "You know what I think? I think the best revenge isn't watching Carson fail. It's letting him watch you succeed." A text lit up my phone. Logan again. "Board meeting tomorrow. Your presence requested. Bringing in auditors to review Carson's department. Thought you should know." "They want me there when they review Carson's mistakes," I said quietly. "Are you going?" I thought about Carson's mockery, his dismissal of my dreams. Then I thought about my thriving fields, the contracts, the workers we'd soon hire. Yes, I decided. Not for revenge, but because we've earned our place at that table. Milo squeezed my hand. "That's why you're winning, Hope. You stopped playing Carson's game and started playing your own." The next morning, as I prepared for the board meeting, Madeline brought over her signature good luck pie. "Your daddy would be so proud," she said, straightening my jacket. "Not just of the farm, but of who you've become." I hugged her, then headed for my truck. The field stretched out before me, green and vital, promising an abundant harvest. Carson's voice no longer echoed in my head. Instead, I heard the rustle of healthy crops, the hum of honest work, and the sweet sound of success that had nothing to do with revenge. The bank's boardroom felt like a courtroom, with Carson sitting at one end looking like a defendant awaiting sentencing. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a nervous twitch in his jaw. I sat at the opposite end, between Logan and Milo, trying not to look directly at him. "Let's begin," Logan announced, standing to address the board. "As you know, we're here to discuss two matters: the expansion of our sustainable agriculture program and the review of our investment portfolio losses." Carson shifted in his seat as Logan pulled up a presentation. The first slide showed my farm's production numbers. "Ms. Foster's operation has exceeded all expectations," Logan continued. "Quality metrics are outstanding. Employee satisfaction in our cafeterias is up 40%, and we're seeing significant positive PR." "That's all very nice," one board member interrupted. "But let's address the elephant in the room: the investment division's losses." Carson cleared his throat. "If I could explain—" "Please do," another board member said coldly. "Explain how you lost $30 million in high-risk ventures while ignoring our sustainable investment initiatives." I watched Carson squirm, remembering all the times he'd belittled my little farming project. Now here we were, roles reversed. "Nobody could have predicted the market shift," Carson protested. "And with all due respect, comparing investment banking to farming is..." "Is what?" Logan cut in. "Ms. Foster's operation has shown a 300% return on investment in 18 months. Your department has lost nearly everything it touched." My phone buzzed silently. Angela. "Paisley's posting cryptic quotes about betrayal and karma. What's happening?" The boardroom door opened and a woman in a sharp suit entered, carrying a thick folder. "The audit results," she announced, distributing copies. Carson's face went ash white as he read. I didn't need to see the documents to know they were bad. "In light of these findings," Logan said, "we're recommending immediate restructuring of the investment division. Carson, we'll need your resignation by end of day." "This is ridiculous." Carson stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "I built this division, and you're going to push me out because of some farmer?" "Sit down." Logan's voice was steel. "You're being pushed out because you made reckless decisions that cost this bank millions. Ms. Foster's success only highlights your failure." I felt no joy watching Carson crumble, just a hollow sort of pity. He caught my eye across the table, and for a moment I saw the man I'd once loved, before ambition and arrogance had consumed him. "There's more," Logan continued. "The board has approved a major expansion of our sustainable agriculture program. Ms. Foster, we'd like to make you our primary consultant for implementing similar programs across our entire network. Milo squeezed my hand under the table as Carson stood again, this time heading for the door. He paused beside me. "I suppose you're happy now," he said quietly. "You finally got your revenge." "This isn't revenge, Carson," I replied. "This is just business. Isn't that what you always told me?" After the meeting, Milo and I stood in the elevator, still processing everything. "You okay?" he asked. "Honestly, I don't know." The elevator dinged at the lobby. "Let's go home. I need to check on the new seedlings." In the parking lot, we found Paisley waiting by my truck. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, but her voice lacked its usual venom. "He's a mess. We're probably going to lose the house." "I'm sorry about that," I said, meaning it. But Carson made his own choices. "Did he?" She looked at me hard. "Or was he just trying to prove something like you were?" Her words followed me all the way home. At the farm, Madeline was waiting with Angela, who'd driven down after my texts about the meeting. "So it's done?" Angela asked. "Carson's really out?" "It's done." I looked out over my fields, where workers were preparing the new section for planting. "But it doesn't feel like I thought it would." "Because you're not the same person who wanted revenge," Milo said, joining us on the porch. "You're the person who built all this instead." My phone buzzed one last time. Logan. "Board approved full funding for expansion. Contract being drawn up. Also, Carson just cleaned out his office. Thought you should know." I put the phone away and grabbed my work gloves. "Come on," I said to Milo. "Those seedlings won't plant themselves." As we walked to the fields, I heard Angela tell Madeline, "I've never seen her this happy. Not even when she was with Carson." "That's because she finally found something better than revenge," Madeline replied. "She found herself." The afternoon sun warmed my back as I knelt in the soil, ready to plant something new. The taste of revenge had faded, replaced by the sweeter flavor of genuine success. The local diner buzzed with morning chatter when Carson walked in. I hadn't expected him to show up after my message, but there he was, wearing jeans and a plain shirt instead of his usual designer suits. 3 months had passed since the board meeting. "You wanted to talk?" He slid into the booth across from me. "Come to gloat some more?" "Actually, I heard you're selling your house." I stirred my coffee. "And that you're looking for work." He laughed bitterly. "News travels fast in small towns. Yes, we're selling. Paisley's already moved back to her parents' place." "I have a business proposition for you." That got his attention. The waitress arrived with more coffee, and Carson waited until she left before speaking. "You can't be serious. The bank's expansion project is bigger than we anticipated. We need someone with financial expertise to manage the business side while Milo and I handle production." "And you thought of me?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Your ex-husband who lost everything?" "I thought of someone who knows banking inside and out, who needs a fresh start, and who might have learned something from failure." The diner's bell chimed as Milo entered, right on schedule. He joined us, nodding curtly to Carson. "Show him," I said. Milo pulled out a folder and spread documents across the table. Projected earnings, expansion plans, partnership opportunities, everything we'd been working on. "This is..." Carson studied the numbers, his banker's instincts kicking in. "This is impressive, but why would you trust me?" "Because you have nothing left to prove," Milo said. "And neither does Hope." Carson looked up sharply. "You two are together now, aren't you?" "That's not relevant to this discussion," I said firmly. "Actually, it is." Carson closed the folder. "How do you know this isn't just another revenge play? Getting me to work for my ex-wife and her new boyfriend?" "Because revenge doesn't grow anything worth harvesting," I replied. "I learned that the hard way." The diner door chimed again. Angela walked in, followed by Logan. This wasn't part of the plan. "Sorry," Angela said, sliding in next to Carson. "But when you told me about this meeting, I called Logan. He has something to say." Logan pulled up a chair. "Carson, The bank's been watching Hope's operation closely. We're implementing similar programs across the country. We need people who understand both banking and agriculture. And do you think I'm qualified? Carson scoffed. After everything? I think you're uniquely qualified because of everything, Logan replied. You've seen both sides now. That's valuable. Carson stared into his coffee cup for a long moment. I lost everything because I couldn't stand the idea of Hope succeeding where I said she'd fail. How pathetic is that? Less pathetic than letting pride stop you from a second chance, Milo said quietly. The waitress returned with plates of eggs and toast. We ate in silence while Carson reviewed the documents again. The salary's fair, he finally said. But I want equity. If I'm helping build this, I want a stake in it. 5%, I offered, with performance-based increases. 10, 7, and you start at the bottom. You learn every aspect of the operation, just like I did. Carson almost smiled. You drive a harder bargain than you used to. I learned from the best, I said pointedly. He extended his hand. Deal. As we shook on it, Angela wiped away what suspiciously looked like tears. Dad would love this. His kids finally working together. Sort of. Speaking of family, Logan interjected, the bank's planning a big press event. Local farm leads agricultural revolution. That kind of thing. We'd like all of you there. All of us? Carson asked. It's a story of redemption, Logan said. Second chances. People eat that up. After everyone left, Milo and I stayed behind. You sure about this? He asked. No, I admitted. But neither was I when I came back to the farm. Sometimes you have to plant seeds without knowing if they'll grow. My phone buzzed. A text from Carson. Thank you. I don't deserve this chance. I showed it to Milo, who squeezed my hand. That's how I know you made the right choice. The Carson who mocked your dreams would never have sent that message. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the autumn fields. Workers were already starting their day at the farm, and I could see Madeline on her porch, probably wondering how the meeting had gone. Ready to tell her? Milo asked. Ready to tell everyone, I replied. It's time to grow something new. We drove home, past Carson's for sale sign, past the bank where he'd lost everything, toward the fields where we'd all get a chance to plant something better than revenge. Hope. The Autumn Harvest Festival transformed the farm into a showcase of everything we'd achieved. Tables groaned under the weight of our organic produce, and crowds milled around display boards showing our expansion plans. Even Paisley showed up, tentatively sampling cherry tomatoes at one of the tasting stations. These are actually amazing, she admitted when I approached. Carson told me about the job offer. It's good of you. People can surprise you, I said, watching Carson demonstrate our irrigation system to a group of interested investors. He'd traded his designer suits for work boots and hadn't complained once about the early mornings. Hope, Angela called out, rushing over. The governor just arrived. Logan's bringing her this way. I smoothed my shirt, suddenly nervous. This wasn't just a harvest festival. It was our official launch as the bank's flagship agricultural program. Everything we'd worked for came down to this moment. Ms. Foster, the governor smiled, shaking my hand. I've heard remarkable things about your operation, though I understand it wasn't always smooth sailing. Before I could respond, Carson stepped forward. Actually, I can speak to that. I used to think success only looked one way. Suits, corner offices, investment portfolios. I was wrong. Carson was our biggest critic, I added. Now he's our CFO and one of our hardest workers. That's what makes this story so compelling, Logan said. It's not just about sustainable agriculture. It's about sustainable relationships, community, growth. Milo joined us, dirt still on his hands from showing visitors the new greenhouse. Hope taught us all that the best growth happens in the most unexpected places. The governor nodded approvingly. Well, you've certainly got my support. We need more operations like this across the state. As the officials moved on, Madeline appeared with her famous pie. Your daddy would be proud, she said, But this time she was looking at both me and Carson. Both of you, finding your way back to what matters. Speaking of finding your way, Angela nudged me, nodding toward Milo, who was now showing Paisley how to test soil composition. When are you two making it official? We're focusing on the farm, I started, but Carson interrupted. Like you two aren't already practically married. He scoffed, but without malice. The way you finish each other's sentences about crop rotation? Nauseating. Look who's talking, I shot back. I saw you asking Madeline for gardening tips yesterday. Hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it right. He grew serious. I owe you that much. The festival continued into evening when we lit lanterns throughout the fields. Visitors wandered the illuminated paths between crops, and somewhere someone started playing guitar. Hope? Milo called softly, finding me by the old barn. Come see this. He led me to the hayloft where I'd spent that first night back, planning my revenge. Now it was transformed into a cozy space with cushions and twinkling lights. I thought you might need a quiet moment, he said. It's been quite a day. Quite a year, I corrected, settling beside him. Through the hayloft door, we could see the whole farm spread out below, glowing with lantern light. You know what I love most about farming? He asked, taking my hand. There's always another season, another chance to grow something new. I turned to face him, understanding exactly what he meant. Are you asking me something, Milo? Depends. Are you ready to plant something permanent? Before I could answer, voices drifted up from below. They're in the hayloft. Carson's voice carried. Should we interrupt? Don't you dare, Angela hissed. Let them have this moment. Fine, Carson sighed. But if they're not down in 10 minutes, I'm sending Madeline up with pie. Milo and I laughed, and in that moment, I knew. This was what success really felt like. Not the sweet taste of revenge, but the rich flavor of life lived fully, of relationships restored and new ones blooming. Yes, I said simply. Below, the festival continued, voices and music mingling with the evening breeze. I could pick out Carson explaining cash flow to Madeline, Angela chatting with the governor, Paisley actually laughing at something Logan said. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from the bank's PR team. Story goes national tomorrow. Local farm leads agricultural revolution. A tale of growth, redemption, and sustainable success. I put the phone away and leaned into Milo's embrace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new growth, new possibilities. But tonight, in this moment, everything we'd planted had bloomed into something far more beautiful than revenge. Ready to go back down? Milo asked. In a minute, I said, savoring the view of my thriving fields and the family, old and new, gathered below. I'm just enjoying the harvest.